Hey there, every single one watching this video. You say hello.
Hello.
Well, here we are with another fanfiction, and in this case, we're reading one that I wanted to read, and neither of us have any clue what it is. I mean, we have the description, but more than that, there's nothing to it. But you say something. Don't just stay quiet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Now I'm scared. Don't die.
I'm sorry.
That's
No,
okay.
I won't die.
Okay. So you got and what do you think of this going in? Like, what do you think this is gonna be?
I have no idea. Where's the description again?
It's on the top of the screen.
Here we
Like,
go. Here we go. After the events of filli vanilli, Pinkie Pie approaches Fluttershy with apologies. But when Fluttershy probes into just why and for what Pinkie is apologizing, Pinkie finds out that there are quite a few friendship lessons she has still to learn.
okay, so what do you think this is gonna be?
I have a feeling that Pinkie's going to come to apologize, and Fluttershy has forgiven her so completely that she's intentionally not remembering what it was that Pinkie did, and
Hmm.
Pinkie realizes that she hasn't learned how to do that yet.
To hold a grudge?
Just how to forgive and forget.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, let's start.
Let's find out, shall we?
The lessons left on. Oh wow, wow, that's a great start.
You seem to be having trouble already.
The lessons left unlearned. I'm really super duper sorry. I know.
Fluttershy smiled.
You always are.
In response, Pinkie Pie frowned. She knew Smiles better than she knew almost everything except muffin recipes.
Of
She
course.
was a she was a connoisseur of smiles, one could say. I'm a connoisseur of burgers, personally. And while some ponies thought there were only one or two different kinds of smiles, Pinkie knew better. There were lots and lots of different kinds of smiles, including smiles that didn't ever reach the eyes. Smiles that hurt to look at. Smiles that weren't the least bit happy. Smiles that weren't really smiles at all. Smiles like the one Fluttershy wore right then and there, and seeing it pointed directly at her made Pinkie's stomach churn a little.
Flourish,
Pinkie nibbled on her lower lip uncertainly.
are you mad at me?
Slowly, thoughtfully, Fluttershy shook her head.
No, I'm not angry. I'm not even disappointed, really. I'm just. Just what? I'm not sure I should answer that.
Said Fluttershy, her voice sounding heavy and tired, like a balloon filled up with ball bearings instead of helium.
I'm not sure you'll be ready to listen.
Pinkie gasped.
But I would! I totally would!
Fluttershy sighed a quiet little sigh and got up from the table. She trotted over to her cottage's cozy little kitchen, where a kettle sat upon the stove. In silence, a silence as terrible and empty and deep as the river, Pinkie watched as Fluttershy poured still steaming water from the kettle and prepared some tea. Finally, after a seeming eternity, Fluttershy returned to the dining area of her cottage, carrying 2 cups of tea along with her. Pinkie accepted her cup without a word.
Alright, Pinky.
Fluttershy took a sip of her tea, her mane falling over her eyes as she leaned down to her cup.
Alright. Tell me, tell me then, please, why you're so sorry?
Pinkie perked up a little. That seemed like an easy enough question.
Because I made you upset!
Fluttershy hesitated, her brows furrowing, before at last she nodded.
Yes, I'm afraid that's true, you did.
Fluttershy lifted her head slightly, and her mane fell to the side, revealing her eyes. They stared across the table at Pinkie Pie with an intensity almost on the same level as the stare.
Do you know why I was upset?
I thought
Because.
she agreed. I thought she agreed she would never use the stare on anybody.
Well, she's not technically using it. She's.
She's drunk on tea. She doesn't know what she's doing.
Do you know why I was upset? Because.
Pinkie paused. She fidgeted with her hooves under the table.
Because Twilight and Rarity told me you were upset. Oh god.
Fluttershy just smiled again and sipped her tea. It was awful. This almost sounds like dealing with my autistic brother.
Oh god.
He just doesn't understand why is this really happening? Over the course of the next couple of days, Fluttershy kept on smiling, and it was never the right smile. At parties, at the spa, running errands in the marketplace, Pinky would run into Fluttershy at least once or twice a day, and always Fluttershy would give her that smile that wasn't really a smile. Every one of those terrible smiles dug into Pinky like some foul, tiny, biting beast.
Like a pair
And
of
they
Sprite.
lodged... What? Yes, like a pair of Sprite with teeth.
Ouch!
And they...
Those
Yes,
things will be horrible.
Yes, they will eat you. And they lodged themselves deep down inside of her, filling her up with their poison.
Oh, well, that's
Pinkie...
dark.
Yeah, that does suck. Pinkie Pie didn't know what was wrong, but she knew she was the cause. She knew it was her fault. Sorry, there's a split on my screen and it happened to be right on the word. She tried asking Twilight about it because Twilight was the smartest pony she knew. Twilight just hugged her and said it was something she should think really, really hard about and also maybe talk to Fluttershy about some more. Pinkie explained she'd already tried that and explained that it just plain hadn't worked, and Twilight hugged her harder.
Have you ever heard of something called the Golden Rule?
Twilight asked. Pinkie shook her head as she hugged Twilight back.
The Golden Rule means you should treat other ponies the way that you like to be treated yourself.
A pause, followed by a small cough.
But in your case, you should probably interpret that fairly non-literally. Okay,
said Pinkie, not knowing what else to say. Rarity said a lot of things about Fluttershy and Pinkie Pie being very different kinds of ponies, and so did Applejack. Though Applejack added some extra words about how Pinkie didn't listen too great all the time. Said in that tone of voice that was almost mean, but not quite exactly. It was hard finding a time when Rainbow Dash was alone to ask her about everything, but when Pinkie did, in the big field where Rainbow Dash liked to practice her tricks, Dash pinched her lips together and shook her head.
Pinks, you know I love you, and you know Shy does too.
Rainbow smiled. It wasn't awful like all those times when Fluttershy smiled at her recently, but it still didn't feel the way a Rainbow Dash smile ought to feel.
But I swear, sometimes you can annoy sprites right off a zebra. Do you get what I'm saying?
Pinkie Pie nodded, even though she didn't really. But Rainbow Dash didn't sound mad at her at all, or like she thought Fluttershy was super mad at her, so nodding along felt like an okay thing to do.
Don't die.
I'm not dying.
Yeah.
She tried... Sorry, for some reason I felt like it was your turn to read. She tried baking cupcakes for Fluttershy. Every pony liked cupcakes, and Fluttershy said she liked the cupcakes, and she acted like she liked the cupcakes. But Fluttershy's smiles were still wrong, and awful, and made Pinkie feel cold and scared and alone. She tried cookies and brownies next, but the results were so poor, she ended up canceling her plans to bring out the bigger guns, like moonberry pies and towering multi-layer cakes.
That sounds delicious.
Yes, it does sound delicious. Multi-layer cakes. Desperate, she went back to Twilight. She suggested maybe throwing a party, but Twilight said that wasn't a good idea. Normally, Pinkie Pie would call that just plain silly, because why would a party ever not be a good idea?
In any situation.
Yes. That didn't make any sense, but this wasn't normally. Things weren't normal, not at all. And so Pinkie decided maybe she should listen to Twilight this time and not throw a party. Or maybe she'd postpone throwing a party. She'd give it another week or two at least. At a slow, morose trot, Pinkie returned to Sugar Cube Corner from the library, the short journey taking twice as long as it usually would. Ducking her head into the kitchen, she asked for the rest of the day off. She didn't do that very often. What the heck is wrong with me? She didn't do that very often, and maybe she looked about as miserable as she felt because Mr. and Mrs. Cake didn't argue at all. They just gave her hugs and told her to take all the time she needed. Pinkie smiled at them even though it hurt a little, and after thanking them and hugging them back, she dragged herself upstairs to her room. She locked the door behind her and gathered Gummy up on her forelegs, carrying him over to her special thinking window. Thinking window. I don't have a thinking window. Do you have a thinking window?
No, but I have a thinking ceiling. Like it.
Excellent. I have a thinking chair. I like to sit and think. There wasn't anything different about her special
thinking. Is there anything else
thinking...
to do in a thinking place?
Huh?
Is there anything else to do in a thinking place to go to think?
The toilet is a good place to sit and think. That's a stereotypical good place to think.
Yeah, keep going.
Let's see. There wasn't anything different about her special thinking window from other windows, but she liked to prop her head on the windowsill whenever there was something to be pondered over. Twilight had told her to think really, really hard. Thinking wasn't one of the things Pinky liked doing or was particularly good at doing. It required a lot more staying still and staying quiet than what suited Pinky's nature, but this was important. Fluttershy
You
was
know,
important.
saying that Pinky doesn't really think isn't really right, but whatever. Well, let's leave that for later.
Okay. Yes, I agree. We'll save that for later. At first, she didn't know just what she should think about, so her mind thought about anything and everything. About the cakes, and the twins, and bake-offs, and screwdrivers, and hammers, and balloons, and parties, and more parties, and all the great parties she'd put together in the past, and all the great parties she wanted to put together in the future. And by the time Pinky realized she hadn't done any thinking about what she was supposed to be thinking about, the hour had grown late, and the sky was very dark. You sat there staring out the window for a long time, Pinky.
Jesus.
I want to talk to somebody about that. Pinkie Pie let out a frustrated little grunt. This was no good at all. Frowning, she wondered what had gone wrong. And a tiny little voice whispered that maybe she wanted not to think about things with Fluttershy. Maybe all the baking and talking to her friends had been part of that too, and maybe it was because of that cold, scared feeling that ran through her every time something reminded her about how very wrong things still were. It was even worse than the time she'd been trying to make friends with Cranky Doodle Donkey, and that had been a really cranky. The thought of Cranky set Pinky off on a whole different other set of memories. But maybe they weren't really so different, which was a confusing thought to have, but it stuck with her, like taffy to the roof of her mouth. And Pinky followed that thought to the next one and to the next. By the time Pinky was done thinking, the first hints of daylight were visible over the... Son of a gun!
It's okay. Don't worry about it.
Were visible over the roofs of all the houses in Ponyville.
Wait, she stood there thinking all night?
Apparently. That's what it looks like, at least. Which I suppose is a good long, time to think.
Yeah. Nighttime is good to
plenty.
think.
Yeah. Especially if you're fishing. As long as you don't fall asleep.
Like a certain someone I know.
Hey, wait a minute.
To keep going.
Low blow. Okay, where was I?
Fluttershy smile.
Here we go. Fluttershy smiled her not smile as soon as she'd opened the door to her cottage.
Good morning, Pinkie Pie. Hi.
Normally Pinky would bounce or wave or sing a little good morning song, but this wasn't normally. Instead, she scuffed a hoof along Fluttershy's front stoop.
Can we talk maybe?
A pause, a hesitation. Then, nodding, Fluttershy replied,
I'm in the middle of feeding the animals, so if you don't mind, I can talk while I work. Sure, I don't mind at all.
Pinky asserted, following in Fluttershy's wake as the Pegasus trotted back inside the cottage.
I was thinking really, really hard. Twilight told me I should, and Applejack and Ratty and Dash told me, so I did.
Fluttershy picked up a bag of bird seed and poured it out into a wide, shallow dish. When she glanced back at Pinky, she didn't say a word, but her smile was gone. Pinky couldn't decide whether that was a good thing or not. And I ended up... sorry, that's yours.
And I ended up thinking about Cranky Doodle a lot, which was kind of weird because you're not cranky. I mean, you're not even a donkey.
Pinky frowned at herself and thoughtfully stuck out her tongue. This wasn't quite what she'd wanted to say to Fluttershy when she'd rushed over from the bakery, but she supposed it was close enough.
But I wonder if maybe I was thinking about Cranky for a reason.
Fluttershy carried the dish of birdseed over to an open window in her living room, Pinky trailing her all the while, and sat on the windowsill. In a quiet voice, she offered,
I like Cranky. He seems like a nice donkey. Oh yeah, he is.
Pinky nodded enthusiastically. It was comforting to have something solid and concrete like that to latch onto, because of course Cranky was a nice donkey.
And you're a super nice pony too.
Fluttershy blushed a bit, but Fluttershy blushed all the time, so that probably didn't mean anything. Probably.
Probably.
Maybe. But I know Cranky...
That's me. But I know Cranky likes a lot of peace and quiet, and so do you. And there's a lot I don't understand about Cranky, because sometimes he doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And
trailing off, Pinky glanced down at her hoofs. She'd felt a lot more sure about all of this back when she was still at home. alone with Gummy and watching the sun rise. She knew she'd already screwed up a whole bunch, and she didn't know how much more screwing up she could do without getting things even worse than they already were. Without things getting so much worse that she couldn't fix them.
Pinkie Pie, are you alright?
Pinkie took a deep breath.
It doesn't make any sense why we have stress fights, because come on, you have the most beautiful voice ever. Oh, I'm pretty sure I said that already, sorry. And I'm putting absolute love to sing it. I maybe I'm acting a little silly because I thought it was silly.
The only sound to be heard was the chirping of birds by the windowsill. Pinkie needed to lift her head to see if Fluttershy was listening, to see how Fluttershy was reacting. Almost as much as she needed to see... What? Hang on.
Go.
To see how Fluttershy was reacting, almost as much as she needed to not see all of that right now. But for the moment, she continued staring down at all the swirls and whirls in the wooden floorboards of Fluttershy's cottage.
Oh, sorry. Whenever I'm scared of stuff, I just laugh. It always makes it better.
Pinkie continued, her voice wavering.
But I guess I didn't make it better. Not when it's stuff you're scared of instead of stuff I'm scared of, Pinkie. And I kinda don't understand. I don't think, but I want to. I really, really do, because you're my friend and I don't want to hurt you like that ever again. Dude.
Pinkie lifted her head. Fluttershy was staring straight at her with tears in her eyes.
And I don't know, maybe you don't wanna because I already upset you a whole bunch, but maybe you could help me to understand, pretty please.
It started out slowly at first, subtly, just a twitching at the corner of Fluttershy's mouth, followed by a... what?
Crinkle?
A crinkle around Fluttershy's eyes. But when Fluttershy smiled, it was a real smile. Warm and beautiful and bright as the sun after an eclipse, and seeing that smile on Fluttershy's face felt better than throwing the biggest and amazingest party in the whole wide world. The mid-afternoon sun warmed Pinkie's belly as she lay flat on her back in the grassy meadows just on the side of Fluttershy's cottage. It felt nice, but not as nice as having Fluttershy resting beside her. As the two of them chatted, it had taken some time to work through Fluttershy's entire to-do list. There were a lot more animals in the cottage than it seemed. At first, oh, son of a... Then it seemed at first glance.
This episode is a lot of yawning.
Yeah, you're going to have to edit some of it. And their talk during chores had been interrupted by a badger here or a toad there. Not that Pinkie complained. She was happy as long as Fluttershy was happy. And even if Fluttershy wasn't exactly and perfectly happy right now, she was a lot closer to it than the last time Pinkie had come over.
Let me think if I can come with a good comparison,
said Fluttershy, frowning thoughtfully.
It will be like, Pinkie, do you remember when you remember the super birthday party we threw for you?
Giggling, Pinkie nodded.
Well, of course. It was only the absolutely best birthday party ever. Well, I'm glad you think so.
Fluttershy giggled a bit herself before quickly turning sober again.
But you didn't think that at first. At first, you thought we were avoiding you on purpose, remember?
Pinkie stopped giggling too. She remembered. She didn't want to most of the time, but she remembered. Fidgeting with her hooves, she managed to nod in response to Fluttershy's question.
And do you remember how it made you feel when you thought we didn't want to be your friends anymore? Not good.
Pinkie's ears went flat against her head. Almost involuntarily, that terrible afternoon rushed back to her, flooding her mind with all its painful memories. She whimpered a little.
Felt really, really not good. Like I didn't take baths of soul apple candy or something, and I couldn't even throw them up because I tried to feel better. Because the bad feelings making me sing, not actually candy.
A look of mild distress, possibly disgust, crossed Fluttershy's face, but it passed quickly.
That's a very interesting analogy. I don't eat much sour candy, but I do know what it's like, and it's not able to get rid of those bad feelings. You do?
Fluttershy nodded.
It feels exactly like that when some pony laughs at me, or whenever I just think ponies might laugh at me.
Scott, what the heck? What did I just read?
What?
I don't know.
I'm gonna have to tell you so much.
It was like a word that didn't exist was there. Anyways, You're gonna have to cut that out.
Damn it, dude.
Pinkie Pie opened her mouth to say what she didn't really know, but clapped both fur hooves over her muzzle before she could. She couldn't just say whatever popped into her head. Well, actually, she could, and she probably would in the future, at least most of the time. But sometimes it was really important to think first about what she wanted to say. She felt pretty sure this was one of those times. So she thought about it.
Oh my god.
An excellent idea to think about it. She thought about having that icky, sick feeling down in her stomach and about how it would feel if it came around every time somebody laughed at her. It was really hard to imagine because Pony laughed at her all the time. But she tried. She even scrunched her eyes shut tight for maximum thinking power. I guess that makes a little sense. Be able to think more. Anyways. Again. Today's message was brought to you by yawning. It's everywhere. Get used to it. Let's see. Finally, as her eyes popped back open, Pinkie quietly said,
Sorry. I'm sorry I said that stuff and made you feel like you're eating 10 packs of sour apple candy. Thank you, Pinkie.
Fluttershy reached over and gave her a hug.
I appreciate the apology.
Feeling warm and happy all over, Pinkie Pie hugged Fluttershy back for all that she was worth.
I was supposed to meet with Early at the spa soon, so I have to go back home and hurry already, but...
Fluttershy glanced up towards her cottage.
Well, if you ever like to come over for tea and just, chat like this again, that might be nice. Sure, that sounds great.
Pinkie hopped to her hooves and followed as Fluttershy headed up the path that led to her front door. By unspoken agreement, they stopped at the fork in the path to say their goodbyes. To the right stood the cottage, while to the left stood Ponyville. Fluttershy turned around to face Pinkie with a new and strange expression in her eyes.
Pinkie Pie, I don't really think you have a simple little brain, and I don't really think that the parties are frivolous. Well, of course, parties are the best. Besides, that was super duper a long time, and it's silly to still...
What? Oh, Fluttershy, sorry, I thought you stopped reading. Cause me. Fluttershy, well, I guess you did stop reading cause me. Fluttershy winced just a little, and Pinkie swallowed her next words. Then she took another gulp of air to make extra sure all those words stayed now. It wasn't silly. Fluttershy thought it was important enough to bring up, and if Fluttershy thought it was important, that meant it wasn't silly at all.
I mean, thanks, Fluttershy.
Pinkie turned up the wattage on her smile as high as it would go. Then, remembering what Fluttershy said to her just a minute ago, she added,
I appreciate the apology.
And when Fluttershy smiled back, she knew she'd said the right thing.
Huh. Well, that was certainly something.
Mm-hmm.
Should we read the autos note?
Nope. Doesn't look like it.
Shouldn't we? I mean... No, it's just an editing. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you were right.
About what?
About what you said the history is gonna be about.
Oh yeah, I totally called it, didn't I?
Yeah. It was
I can do that with movies too.
It was actually pretty good. I really like this one.
Yeah.
Although I had only one problem, and it's with the whole Pinkie doesn't think, because she usually doesn't, but really actually she has a lot of great ideas, but I don't think it's just from her randomness, because she actually thinks them through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that.
Anything you gotta add?
Nothing important. I think it was I think it's an excellent example of how, even in the show's context, sometimes it feels like they leave certain things out.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see someone outside the show to take it upon themselves to address that.
Right.
And that seems to have given these things a
Because
very...
God damn it, Pinkie was so goddamn bad in that episode.
Oh, true. So true.
Well, certainly, let's hope that doesn't happen ever again.
Yes.
Well,
Indeed.
Well, anything you gotta add before I close this up?
No, I think we're good. Bronies and Pickle Sisters, thank you very much for joining us this evening, and we hope you enjoyed story time. And in the meantime, or whatever, for the next several hours, hope you enjoy life in general.
Well, that's a good thing to enjoy.
Yep, I enjoy it
See you guys later.
every day.
See you guys later.
Yep.